dead of night, at the Vanguard Sleep Institute, a terrifying phenomenon unfolds. Patients plagued by insomnia are haunted by ghostly figures, shadowy watchers at the boundary of sleep and consciousness. Dr. Elena Rowan, a renowned sleep scientist, leads her team into a groundbreaking experiment, only to discover a chilling truth. These entities are not mere figments of the mind, but spectral beings feeding on human experiences. As the line between the natural and the supernatural blurs, the team faces an entity that defies all understanding, leading to a shocking and otherworldly conclusion. This is a story where science meets the unexplained, and the cost of curiosity may be more than anyone can bear. Chapter 1. The Twilight Threshold. The sun had barely set over the horizon as Dr. Elena Rowan stood in front of the Vanguard Sleep Institute, its modern facade a stark contrast to the fading light. She gazed up at the building, its sleek design promising cutting-edge treatment and hope to those plagued by the elusive grasp of sleep. As the founder and leading expert in sleep disorders, Dr. Rowan's life's work was etched into these walls. Stepping inside, she was greeted by the familiar hum of the clinic at dusk. The lobby was tranquil, designed to soothe the frazzled nerves of its patients. The walls were adorned with soothing colors, and a soft, ambient melody played in the background. It was here that the troubled came seeking respite from their nightly battles with insomnia. In her office, Dr. Rowan reviewed the file of their newest patient, Michael Saunders. Michael, a middle-aged man with a kind yet weary face, had been suffering from severe insomnia, worsened by troubling hallucinations at the edge of sleep. His case was particularly challenging, and Dr. Rowan felt a twinge of excitement at the prospect of unraveling its mysteries. As she made her way to the observation room, her team was already preparing Michael for the night. The room was a marvel of technology, with sensors and monitors that could pick up the slightest anomaly in a patient's sleep pattern. Michael lay on the bed, a tangle of wires connected to him, looking more like a man preparing for a space voyage than a night's sleep. "Good evening, Michael," Dr. Rowan greeted, her voice a blend of warmth and professionalism. "How are you feeling?" "A bit nervous, Dr. Rowan," Michael admitted, his eyes darting around the room. "I keep seeing things, right before I fall asleep. Shadows, figures. I can't tell if they're real or not." "That's quite common with severe insomnia," Dr. Rowan reassured him. "Our brain can play tricks on us in that state, between waking and sleeping. Tonight, we'll monitor your brain activity closely and see what's really going on." As the team finished their preparations, Dr. Rowan stepped back into the control room, a glass-walled area adjacent to the observation room. From here, they could observe Michael without intruding on his privacy. The screens lit up with graphs and numbers, each a piece of the puzzle that was Michael's condition. The night began like any other, with Michael's brainwaves flickering on the monitors, a symphony of the unconscious. But as hours ticked by, something unusual began to emerge. The readings showed more irregular patterns, not typical of standard sleep cycles. "Are you seeing this?" Dr. Rowan asked her team, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Yes." "It's highly unusual," replied Dr. Alexei Petrov, her lead researcher. "It's as if his brain is fluctuating between deep sleep and full wakefulness in a matter of seconds." As they observed, Michael began to stir, his body twitching slightly. On the monitor, they saw his eyes moving rapidly, yet the readings suggested he was not in REM sleep. "It's happening," Michael suddenly murmured, his voice laced with fear. "They're here, watching me." Dr. Rowan's heart raced. This was no ordinary case of insomnia. Something deeper, something unexplored, was unfolding before them. As Michael's whispers filled the room, Dr. Rowan knew they were on the cusp of a discovery that could redefine the understanding of the human mind at the edge of sleep, and perhaps something even beyond. The night at the Vanguard Sleep Institute took an unexpected turn as Michael Saunders, restless and fraught with panic, sat upright in his bed, his eyes wide with terror. "They're here! Can't you see them?" he shouted, his voice cracking with hysteria. Dr. Elena Rowan rushed into the observation room, her team close behind. Michael was pointing at an empty corner, his face contorted in fear. "There's nothing there, Michael," she tried to reassure him, but her words fell on deaf ears. Back in the control room, the monitors displayed something unprecedented. "Look at this," Dr. Petrov exclaimed, his finger tracing the lines on the screen. "It's as if there are two distinct brainwave patterns overlapping. I've never seen anything like this." The team watched in awe and confusion as the readings fluctuated wildly. It was as if Michael's brain was hosting another consciousness, one that did not belong to him. Unable to calm Michael, and with the readings becoming increasingly erratic, Dr. Rowan made the difficult decision to end the experiment for the night. They gently sedated Michael, ensuring his safety and comfort. The following morning, the team gathered in the conference room, surrounded by reams of data from the previous night. "These patterns suggest a sort of cognitive interference," Dr. Rowan hypothesized, "as if Michael's brain was momentarily merging with another entity." "But that's impossible, isn't it?" asked Dr. Lydia Chen, another researcher. "It goes against everything we know about neurology." Before the debate could continue, the clinic received 2 new admissions, both displaying symptoms eerily similar to Michael's: severe insomnia, accompanied by hallucinations of shadowy figures. Dr. Rowan felt a chill run down her spine. This was no coincidence. With a new sense of urgency, the team prepared for the night. They equipped the new patients, along with Michael, with an advanced neural imaging device, hoping to capture more detailed data. The clinic buzzed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As night fell, Dr. Rowan and her team watched the monitors with bated breath. One by one, as each patient teetered on the brink of sleep, the strange brainwave patterns reappeared, more defined than before. It was as if the patients were not just seeing these ghostly figures, but were somehow connecting with them on a neurological level. "We need to delve deeper," Dr. Rowan declared, her eyes fixed on the screens. "Whatever this is, it's challenging our understanding of the human mind. We have to uncover the truth behind these shadows." The team nodded in agreement, ready to embark on a journey into uncharted territory. The Institute, once a beacon of hope for those seeking rest, had now become the epicenter of a mystery that blurred the lines between science and the supernatural. It's time for a quick scare break. As we linger in these shadowy realms, a small favor I dare to ask. If my tales of terror bring you thrills, do not let our journey end here. Hit like, subscribe, and join our dark congregation. I must extend my deepest, most sinister thanks to those souls brave enough to support our chilling journey. Your contributions, kindred spirits, are the lifeblood of our channel. They help me continue to craft the haunting tales that send shivers down your spine and keep you awake at night, pondering what lurks in the shadows. If you too find yourself captivated by our chilling chronicles and wish to help the channel, consider clicking the thanks button below. Your support, dear viewer, is not just a contribution. It's a lifeline that allows me to continue weaving these terrifying tales just for you. Let's embrace the darkness once more. Let's get back to the shadows. Chapter 3. The Hijacked Minds. The third night at the Vanguard Sleep Institute descended with an air of tense anticipation. Dr. Elena Rowan and her team prepared to observe the 3 patients, each now exhibiting eerily similar symptoms. The atmosphere in the control room was thick with a mix of scientific curiosity and underlying fear. As the patients drifted towards sleep, the monitors once again began to show the bizarre, overlapping brainwave patterns. "It's as if their brains are hosting an additional consciousness," Dr. Petrov murmured, his eyes never leaving the screen. Dr. Lydia Chen, always the skeptic, added cautiously, "It's almost like something or someone is hijacking their brains to experience through their senses." The team contemplated this unsettling idea. Was it possible that these patients were more than just victims of a sleep disorder? Were they unwilling hosts to some unknown entity? Suddenly, all 3 patients began to thrash in their beds, their eyes snapping open with pure terror. "They're here! They're right above me!" screamed one, his voice hoarse with fear. The others echoed similar cries, all staring at empty spaces in the room. Dr. Rowan and her team rushed into the patients' rooms, trying to offer reassurance, but their words were drowned out by the patients' screams. In the control room, the monitors showed nothing out of the ordinary. No spectral figures, no anomalies, nothing that could explain the terror of the patients. Back in the conference room, the team faced a troubling reality. "Our equipment is state-of-the-art," Dr. Rowan stated, "and yet it picks up nothing. These entities, if they exist, are beyond our current understanding of science." The discussion turned to what these experiences could mean. Were these ghostly figures mere hallucinations, or something more? The idea of a consciousness able to hijack a human brain to relive life was chilling and unprecedented. Dr. Chen proposed a radical idea. "What if we try to communicate with these entities? If they are using our patients to experience the living world, maybe we can reach out to them." The proposal was met with mixed reactions, but Dr. Rowan knew they had little choice. They were dealing with something that defied all known medical and scientific boundaries. It was time to venture into the unknown. As the chapter closed, the team prepared for a groundbreaking experiment, one that would either unveil a new realm of understanding or plunge them deeper into the mysteries of the human mind. The line between the natural and the supernatural was blurring, and they were at its forefront. Chapter 4: The Unseen Assault. The day that followed was a whirlwind of preparation and apprehension at the Vanguard Sleep Institute. The clinic, once a haven for those afflicted by sleep disorders, now found itself grappling with an unseen, inexplicable phenomenon. 3 more patients were admitted, all reporting the same haunting experiences of ghostly watchers. Dr. Elena Rowan, her usual composure shaken, recognized the gravity of the situation. The pattern was undeniable, and the implications were alarming. In a meeting with her team, her voice carried a weight of responsibility. "This is far beyond a simple sleep disorder. We're dealing with something that could redefine our understanding of consciousness itself." That night, they initiated an ambitious experiment. All 6 patients were connected to the monitoring equipment, their brainwaves displayed in real time as they drifted into the troubled twilight of their sleep. The control room was tense with anticipation. As the patients began to exhibit the familiar symptoms, Dr. Rowan gave the signal. Dr. Alexei Petrov, equipped full-bodied with a microphone and a brave, albeit nervous demeanor, entered the observation room. "Can you hear me?" He addressed the empty air, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "We want to understand you, to communicate with you." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, one of the patients began to scream, pointing to a corner of the room. Dr. Petrov turned, and for a fleeting second he saw it, a shadowy figure, its form barely perceptible, radiating a palpable sense of anger and violation. The figure lunged towards Dr. Petrov, its movements a blur of rage and resentment. Petrov's eyes widened in horror, and he stumbled backward, his attempt to scream stifled by an unseen force. The team in the control room watched in helpless terror as Dr. Petrov collapsed to the floor, motionless. Dr. Rowan was the first to react, rushing into the room with the medical team at her heels. They found Dr. Petrov alive, but unresponsive, his eyes vacant, lost in a deep coma-like state. The aftermath was chaos. The patients were sedated and carefully monitored, while Dr. Petrov was rushed to the hospital. The team was left in shock, their scientific curiosity now overshadowed by a profound sense of dread. Dr. Rowan, sitting beside Dr. Petrov's hospital bed, contemplated their next move. They had crossed a boundary, provoked something that they did not understand, and the consequences were lying right in front of her. As she looked at Petrov, her colleague and friend, now trapped in an unreachable world, she realized the true extent of their ordeal. They were not just battling a sleep disorder. They were facing an unknown entity that had shown its capability to strike back when disturbed. The chapter closed with Dr. Rowan making a silent vow to uncover the truth, not just for the sake of science, but to save her patients, her team, and perhaps even herself from the unseen threat that lurked in the shadows of the human mind. Chapter 5. The Shadow in the Night. Exhausted and burdened with guilt, Dr. Elena Rowan struggled to find solace in her own home. The image of Dr. Petrov lying motionless in a hospital bed haunted her thoughts. Could she have prevented this? Was her quest for understanding worth the price they were paying? As she finally succumbed to sleep, a chilling sensation crept over her. In that twilight state between consciousness and slumber, she saw it, a dark figure looming over her. Her heart raced, but the weariness of her body dragged her into the depths of sleep. In her dreams, she was never alone. A presence, alien and parasitic, seemed to hover nearby, leeching off her emotions, her memories. It was a violating sensation, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. She awoke abruptly in the dead of night, her eyes snapping open to the sight of a shadowy figure in the corner of her room. "Who are you? What do you want?" she cried out, but the figure remained silent, an enigmatic watcher in the darkness. The next day at the clinic, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken fears. The team, usually composed and professional, looked visibly drained, their faces etched with fatigue. Dr. Rowan gathered them in the conference room, her expression grave. "I experienced it last night," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "The same entity that our patients have been seeing. And I believe it's not just me, it's happening to all of us." The room fell silent as the team exchanged uneasy glances, their own experiences of the previous night, unspoken yet mutually understood. Dr. Lydia Chen broke the silence. "It's like they're feeding off us, using us as conduits to experience life again. But why? And how do we stop them?" The team grappled with the reality that they were no longer just observers of this phenomenon. They were now part of it. Each of them had become unwilling hosts to these spectral entities. Dr. Rowan, her resolve hardening, addressed the team. "We need to find a way to communicate with these entities, to understand their purpose. Our traditional scientific methods aren't enough. We need to think outside the box, tap into fields we've never considered before." The team nodded in agreement, their sense of duty overriding their fears. They were in uncharted territory, facing an adversary that defied all logic and understanding. As the chapter closed, Dr. Rowan looked at her team, her allies in this extraordinary battle. Together, they would delve deeper into the unknown, seeking answers not just for the sake of their patients, but to save themselves from the unseen shadows that now haunted their every dream. Chapter 6. The Dream's Abyss. The team at the Vanguard Sleep Institute, armed with a mix of determination and trepidation, set forth on their most daring experiment yet. Dr. Elena Rowan volunteered herself as the subject, a decision that weighed heavily on her, but driven by a need to understand and confront the entity. Central to their plan was the introduction of a pioneering piece of technology, an AI dream reader. This device was designed to interpret and visualize brainwave patterns, essentially allowing the team to watch the subject's dreams unfold in real time. Dr. Rowan was prepared for the experiment, her demeanor a blend of scientific curiosity and underlying fear. She was connected to the usual array of monitors, as well as the dream reader, her eyes closing as she drifted into the realm of sleep. The control room was silent, the team's eyes fixated on the screens. Slowly, the AI began to translate Dr. Rowan's neural activity into visual images. At first, the dreams appeared mundane, echoes of daily life and distant memories. But the atmosphere shifted palpably when a sinister figure emerged in the dreamscape. It was a parasitic entity, its form dark and amorphous, trailing Dr. Rowan through her dreams. The team watched in horror as the creature seemed to feed off her experiences, growing more distinct with every emotion and memory it absorbed. Then, in a chilling moment, the entity turned towards the screen, its gaze piercing through the digital barrier as if aware of its observers. The equipment whirred and beeped frantically before coming to an abrupt halt, plunging the room into a stunned silence. The team, now gripped by fear, stared at the blank screens, unsure if the entity was still present. In a climactic rush of adrenaline, one of the team members, Dr. Lydia Chen, looked towards the still sleeping form of Dr. Rowan. What she saw made her blood run cold. Surrounding Dr. Rowan were not one, but 7 shadowy figures, each one seemingly feeding off her. They were like specters, their forms flickering and shifting, an eerie dance around the unconscious doctor. "Dr. Rowan!" Chen shouted, breaking the paralysis that had gripped the team. They rushed towards her, fear and urgency propelling their movements. As they reached the bed, a horrifying realization dawned on them. Dr. Rowan was gone. In her place lay only her hospital gown, crumpled and empty. The room was filled with an overwhelming sense of loss and disbelief. Had these entities completely drained her of her very essence? The chapter closed on a scene of chaos and despair. The team stood in the room, grappling with the implications of what they had just witnessed. The experiment, meant to be a breakthrough, had taken a terrifying turn, leaving them with more questions than answers, and a haunting void where their leader and friend, Dr. Elena Rowan, had once been. Final chapter. The cycle continues. The aftermath of Dr. Elena Rowan's disappearance left the Vanguard Sleep Institute in a state of shock and despair. The once bustling clinic, a hub of scientific discovery and healing, now stood silent, its doors closed to the public. The team, heartbroken and bewildered, struggled to come to terms with the loss of their leader and the unsettling events they had witnessed. Dr. Lydia Chen, shouldering the weight of the situation, took on the daunting task of reporting to the authorities. Hours were spent in detailed discussions with the police, recounting the inexplicable phenomena they had encountered. The reports, filled with descriptions of shadowy entities and unexplainable occurrences, read more like science fiction than reality. As the days passed, the clinic remained shut, its future uncertain. The team dispersed, each member grappling with the experience in their own way, haunted by the memories and unanswered questions. Exhausted from the emotional toll and the endless inquiries, Dr. Chen finally returned home. The events at the clinic had drained her, both physically and mentally. Seeking solace in the comfort of her own bed, she showered and prepared for a night's rest, yearning for a brief escape in the embrace of sleep. However, as she drifted off, a familiar sensation of unease crept over her. In the dim light of her bedroom, a dark figure emerged, standing ominously at the foot of her bed. A chill ran down her spine as she realized with horror that the figure bore a striking resemblance to Dr. Rowan. The implications were chilling. Dr. Rowan, once a brilliant scientist and compassionate healer, had now become what they had all feared, a parasitic entity, lost between worlds, seeking sustenance from the living. In that moment, Dr. Chen understood the grim reality. The cycle had not been broken. The phenomenon they had sought to study and contain was now perpetuating itself, with their beloved mentor as its newest vessel. The final chapter closed with a haunting ambiguity. The line between the living and the spectral had been irrevocably blurred, leaving a lingering question. How many more would fall prey to this unworldly hunger? The shadow of the Vanguard Sleep Institute and its mysteries would linger long in the minds of those who had witnessed its enigmatic and terrifying events. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey. If your thirst for the unknown and the unexplained is still unquenched, I invite you to delve deeper into the abyss of terror. Just beyond the veil of reality, another story awaits to send shivers down your spine. Dare to join me in the next video, where the unknown becomes known and the unseen seen. Until then, keep the lights dim and your mind open. This is Professor Shadow, signing off.